Hello and welcome to Nikolai's genetics lessons, and here is a problem. Two average-sized parents have three children. The first child is very short, the second child is very tall, and the third child is average-sized. And here is the two questions. Question A explains the inheritance pattern of the height in this pedigree, in particular how it is possible for these parents to have both a very short and very tall child. And question B, the parents decide to have a fourth child. Is it most likely to resemble the first, the second, or the third child? So here's how we are going to solve this problem. Imagine that we have two parents with only one gene that control some characteristic, and this gene present in two copies. Because we are diploid organisms, we may have two copies of the same gene, and those copies can be different. So we call such copies alleles. So imagine that parent 1 would be heterozygous and parent 2 also would be heterozygous for the same gene. So they would have capital A small a genotype, both of them, and their children may have capital A capital A, capital A small a, capital A small a, and small a genotype. You probably know that, for example, if we talk about simple Mendelian genetics, and if, for example, capital A allele would stand for the red color in plants, I would use plants as example because this would be much easier for you to understand, and then I would switch to our problem once again. So if capital A stands for the red color and small a allele would stand for the white color in plants, so capital A and capital A small a genotype would produce plants with red flowers, and small a genotype would produce plants with white flowers. So this is a qualitative trait, and we may have with plants with red flowers or white flowers, and no shadows between them, no pink color. So now let's consider that we have characteristic that is quantitative. So each allele adds something to the trait. And let's now assume that dominant allele A would add, for example, 10 centimeters to the average height, and small allele A would add, say, 5 centimeters to the average height. And let's assume that average height of the male would be 160 centimeters. So this parent would be plus 10 centimeters for the dominant allele and plus 5 centimeters for the recessive allele. So total plus 15 centimeters. So this parent would be 175. 160 plus 10 plus 5, total 15. So his tallness would be 175 centimeters. And the same true for this parent 2. So we have 10 centimeters here and 5 centimeters for the recessive allele A. But now we would have here different picture. We wouldn't have 3:1 ratio, and ratio would be different. So this child would inherit two dominant alleles, so average tallness plus 20 centimeters would give him or her tallness of the 180 centimeters. And this child would have one dominant allele and one recessive allele. So the same is true for this child. 160 centimeters plus 15 here would give us 175 centimeters, and the same is true for this child. And the child who is homozygous recessive would have 5 and 5 centimeters. So his height would be 170 centimeters. So we have, as you see, distribution of the traits as follows. So we have one genotype that is very tall, one that is very small, and one that is average. Sorry, not one, two. So distribution is 1 to 2 and to 1. Once again, 1 is very tall, 2 average sized, and 1 is short. And this model is true when we have only one gene with two alleles that has a different contribution to the tallness, and other quantitative characteristics can be skin color and, for example, body weight. And of course, such characteristics is not under control of only one gene. What would happen if we would have, for example, such characteristics under the control of two genes? And here is an example. So if we cross, for example, two parents, and one parent's genotype would be capital A small a and capital B small b, with another parent whose genotype is capital A small a and capital B small b. This time each parent would produce 4 different variants of the gametes. So genotypes of the parent 1 and parent 2 is the same, so they would produce the same types of gametes. Gametes are haploid, so for example, this parent here can produce one variant of the gametes that is capital A and capital B. Second variant would be capital A and small b. Third variant would be small a and capital B. And the fourth variant would be small a and small b. And once again, because genotype of both parents are the same, so the second parent also would produce the same gametes. So capital A, capital B, and capital A, small b, small a, capital B, and small a, small b. So as you see, now this time we have one gene, and here is the second gene. So the first example were when we had only one gene with two alleles, and distribution were 1 to 2 to 1. And this time our grid would be 4 by 4 cells. So total number of cells would be 16. And now we can list all the possible genotypes, and of course genotypes here would be diploid. So this is haploid, and here we would have diploid organism. For example, here we would have capital A, and capital B, and capital A, capital B, small b, capital A, small a, and capital B, capital A, small a, and capital B, small b, capital A here, capital B, small b here, and capital A here, and small b here. So we just complete this table, and as you see, the genotypes would be as follows, and we have done our table. So capital A, small a, capital B here, capital A, small a, capital B, and small b here, and small a, capital B here, small a, capital B, small b here, and capital A, small a here, capital B, small b, capital A, small a, and small b, small a, and capital B, small b, and the last variant, small a, and small b, small b. Once again, if each dominant allele would give us some characteristic that is going to be superior to the recessive allele, just if we would use the same example, 10 centimeters here, 10 centimeters here, as you see, this genotype would produce tallest variant, and genotype that is here would produce variant that is going to be shortest. So plus 40 centimeters here, so we would have someone who is going to be 2 meters tall, and here we would have someone who is going to be 170 centimeters, for example. This is just an example. Of course, real life situation would be much more complex, but as you see, this is what we have when we have some trait under control of two genes, and our distribution would be not 1 to 2 to 1. This time we have more variance between two extreme variants, and if we build a graph, our graph would look like a bell shape. So here we would have very short variant, here very tall, here would be medium short, medium tall, and most variants we would have that is going to be average size. So if we would do such research, not in one family, but maybe in your school, in your college, we would find the picture that would resemble this bell shape or bell curve. We would have very few people who is going to be very short, we would have very few people who is going to be very tall, and most of the people we would find that is going to be average tall. And the more genes that we have that control the trait, more smooth our bell shape would be here. Because, for example, when we have only one gene with two alleles, our graph would be made by only 3 points: very short, average, and very tall. And we would have most people who is going to be average. So as you see, we gave an answer to the first question, explains the inheritance pattern of the height in this pedigree, in particular how it is possible for these parents to have both very short and very tall child. So if parents are average, they can be heterozygous, but they may have also very tall and very short progeny, but most of their progeny would be average tall. And question B, the parents decide to have a fourth child. Is it most likely to resemble the first, second, or third child? And as you see, probability would be that the child would be average size, so would resemble third child who is average tall. And I have the last note. All my examples that I show you today were based on the only genetic characteristics, and you of course have to take into account that phenotype is genotype plus environmental influence. But once again, I do not take into account environmental influence, and I do all my calculations based on the genotype only. But so just keep in mind that in real life situation, environment may have great influence on all these calculations. And this is all for today. Thank you for your attention. Please subscribe for my new videos that I post almost every day. Thumbs up if you like this video. Please write your comments, questions if you have any, and see you in the next video. Goodbye.